So Sara, thank you so much for coming to join us today at the Women's Majlis. For those of you who don't know, Sara Al Awadhi is an Emirati, born and raised in Dubai. She works as a lawyer at an international law firm called Winston Strawn LLP in Dubai. She's also a rock star who does corporate law, finance, and Islamic law as well. She's worked in London, New York, the UAE, and has supported, some of the key IPOs in the region. So Sara, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We would really like to know more about who you are. Who is Sara? What does she do? How did she get here?
Thank you very much. That is a very big introduction. Before I start talking about me, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone for coming. Thank you for having me here. To be very honest, the Women's Majlis is something that is such an inspirational event, and because it creates a platform for women to tell their stories, to share their experiences, and I think the more events we have like this, the better our society is. And I mean, I see a lot of Emiratis, which is amazing, and whoever isn't Emirati, could you raise your hand? See, I mean, that's also half the room. And I just want to point that out, and I wanted to see for myself because this is such an important topic. It's such an important thing that we're doing, empowering women, and it's amazing to see so many Emiratis and so many non-Emiratis, because this is not just an Emirati or not Emirati issue. This is a global issue that all women and all men should care about. So, so thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
And just about me,
yes.
Women empowerment is something that's actually something I'm very, very passionate about. And it's been something that has been ingrained in me since I've grown up. My upbringing is a very big part of who I am today, and just my behavior and everything. I'm one of 7 kids.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, it's a lot. And so I'm almost the youngest. My little sister Yasmin's 9 years younger than me. But growing up, we're 5 girls and 2 boys, and in our household, our parents, both my mom and my dad, always made clear the women have the exact same rights as the men. And even if that was different outside of the house, they would always make clear, in our home, men and women are equal. And whoever tells you different, that is, we're not going to say things are wrong, but they would say that is wrong. And so that was the narrative that I grew up with. And I believe they got that from my grandparents, both my grandfather and mother. I'll tell you more about them as as our amazing talk goes on. But it was really that upbringing and that underlying layer of empowerment, equality, that eventually made me choose a career in law. Because I realized the power of words, the power of how you can get ideas across when you learn how to express yourself. And especially if you can write the law, you can really create an impact in society by reflecting your values. If mine is to empower women, to make sure there's equality, as a lawyer, I can help create laws that will ensure that happens.
Amazing. So I see from the way that you described your family that you've had consistent support from a very young age. When did you discover that you were passionate about law, or that law had the power to sort of equalize the world that we live in? And when did you decide that you wanted to be a lawyer?
So, I think about this a lot, actually. Why did I choose law? Why didn't I choose something else? And I think it goes back to the point I just touched upon briefly that, I like to tell people, well, my parents used to say I have a big mouth. I'd always argue, so, you should be a lawyer. But the real reason is because I just saw from a very young age the impact that I could have if I could articulate myself well, how I could get points across, how I could really push ideas forward. And everything everything's governed by laws. So the easiest and most efficient way to actually be an agent of change is to go into the law.
Amazing. Let's talk a bit about your career journey. So you've graduated law school. What was it like to come back to the region and look for different firms to join?
Well, first, just to take a little bit of a step back before I graduated, I actually first went to university and I first studied medicine.
Oh, wow.
And I did literature, English literature as a minor, mostly because I loved literature and I didn't know I could become a lawyer. I didn't know I could, you watch TV and everything and you think, at least I did, if you become a lawyer, you practice in the States and that's it. I didn't think there was any other law for some reason. And so I tried that for a year, and I like to tell people this because halfway through that year I realized this is a big mistake. This is, and I didn't know what to do. And at that point I'd actually, on accident, found out that I could study law in the UK and I could practice here, and it seemed like this amazing option. But my parents were paying for me to be in Canada, and I told them this is what I wanted to do. They trusted me to go abroad. And I was 17. I didn't feel like I could change. I'd be a failure. I'd be letting everyone down, especially because pushing education is such a strong narrative in my family. It's so important that I'm like, I can't do this. And that's why I think, I know we talk later on about messages to give to young people,
Yeah.
but ask, sometimes your life is unique, but some of the things you go through, other people will have gone through before that. So it was only when I eventually turned to my sisters and I was like, look, I think this is what I want to do. I think I can do it. Here's universities. I did so much research to try to compensate for this change, that where to study, how I could do law, and how I could bring it back and it could be relevant. And it was only when I spoke with them that they're like, Sara, look, speak to mom and dad. I'm sure they'll trust you. And it was only when I did that my parents were like, yeah, do it. We'll trust you. And it was the best decision. So I applied to the UK. I did my undergraduate there, a bachelor in law. And then I did a training contract with a London law firm. And then I came back out with them in the UAE. Well, actually, I worked in London first, and I only decided to come back earlier than I needed to, so halfway through my training, because I just saw, I think it was at that point when I realized the skills I was gaining, that I realized I can have a major impact if I finish my training out here, because I can talk to young women about getting into this career, all of the things I'm learning, that it would be such a shame for me to spend even another year. My training was 2 years. Even to spend that second year in London, I'd much rather come back. And I'm so happy I did it.
Amazing. And can you share a bit about the types of projects that you've been working on since coming back to the UAE, and how sort of culturally it differed from the law that you were experiencing during your training in the UK?
Absolutely. So when I was in London, I did a lot of finance and a lot of projects work. But coming back here, I did the same Islamic finance, conventional, and projects. But here there's definitely a more unique cultural element that takes a bit more navigating. So I loved it. I loved that I could contribute to investors that wanted to come in and really invest in the region. So a lot of the work that I started to do as well was helping international investors understand the landscape here, understand how to navigate it, excuse me, I have a cold, what the best corporate structures are to integrate here. And then I also helped with large projects in the Middle East region.
Amazing. Were you one of the first female Emirati lawyers within your firm?
I thought you were going to say first Emirati lawyers, period. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to say that. Unfortunately, I haven't met a lot, though, like a lot of Emirati internationally trained lawyers. There are a few of us out there, which is great.
Yeah.
But part of the reason I'm here as well is to get that message out that, and we'll talk about it more, what the benefits of being a lawyer are and why it's so important. But in my law firm, I was. The first law firm I joined that is a UK-based law firm but has a strong presence here. And even the other ones I'd gone to, in one of them, I was only one of two, and in my current one, I'm the only one.
What type of challenges, if any, are you facing by being sort of the only female Emirati lawyer? And were you able to break some of these boundaries or stereotypes that have existed?
So that's a really good question. And if I could just broaden it a bit more than an Emirati woman, an Arab woman.
Yes.
I think it's something that is important to keep talking about because, well, first, as an Emirati woman, the challenges I face, which I feel like aren't talked about enough, is that, this is our country. There's amazing Emiratization initiatives to help give Emiratis opportunities. We're a very young country, but I feel like somewhere between this initiative to empower, it's somehow this lack of communication has resulted in this feeling by perhaps some international companies that, maybe the Emiratis won't work as hard. So there's less of an incentive to want to openly bring them in, and that might be only my perception, whether it's real or not. But my perception was that they don't know how to handle Emiratis when they come in. And a lot of Emiratis, myself included, felt this feeling that if I were to go into an international competitive space, they're going to think I'm only there. They, meaning my colleagues, will think I'm only there because I'm Emirati. So because of Emiratization, she's filling a quota. And if anyone who's ever, when you're young and you're trying to work hard, if you walk into a space and you feel like you have that in the back of your mind, it's demotivating. It's demotivating to think you're only there to fit a quota.
Yeah.
This is not just for Emirati. This is for any minority group that feels like they might be in a space only to fill a KPI, to fill a number. And in my particular case, for the first 3 years, I didn't even wear abaya. And I would dress in Western clothing, and because I was like, I'm determined to show everyone I work hard, I can take on all these projects, and when people would find out I'm Emirati, they would be really surprised. And it was always a good surprise, but later on, I think as I matured a bit more, I realized I don't need to hide my identity, and actually international companies are probably more accepting than I'm perceiving it to be.
Yeah.
So the only way I'm going to find out is if I wear my abaya and I I vocalize that I'm Emirati and, our culture. And since I've been wearing it for the past 2 years at work, it's been very positively received, and people will ask me, they'll ask if they any Emirati related questions, and it's funny, you always get these cultural questions.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying this because if I felt this way, I'm sure a lot of other people think if you're an Emirati in an international space or any minority that maybe you're going to be underestimated. And that's not always the case.
Amazing.
Oh, sorry. So just a final thing, because I realize I mentioned my perspective, but from from a non-Emirati perspective, I think it's important to take that into account. And so sometimes when you're recruiting, make sure to target Emiratis. And, I've spoken to a lot of people that are involved in career fairs, and they're like, Sara, a lot of these career fairs aren't actually asking the questions what career fairs are targeted towards Emiratis. And so as a result, you're not getting the people that are coming from the local high schools and the federal universities. Yeah. You're not getting that. And then you're getting less diversity. And again, we're all here because we know the importance of empowering, and diversity is even selfishly from a company's perspective, it makes your company, it makes it do better.
Yeah.
Because the world is diverse, and if you can have diverse workforce, you have different mentalities, and they can reach out to different target audiences.
You've hit on something that I'm super passionate on about. So I actually lead recruitment or work very closely with different entities within the foundation to bring in the right talent. And so during my previous life, it was how do we get more UAE nationals or GCC nationals or even Arab nationals into consulting? What is your view on how we can get more Emirati lawyers, both men and women, into international firms and into law?
So there's a lot of questions. Okay. I think just to take it from, I think those are two things, Emiratis, but also just women, I think as a first thing, women generally and Emirati women, because at the end of the day, Emirati women, you know, Syrian, and obviously we're all women. And I think one thing recruiters don't do enough, and consulting, it's good that you mentioned that. Consulting, law, a lot of these professions are, the first thing that comes to mind is they're highly competitive. There's long working hours. There's, it's a continuous deal flow. And I think what recruiters don't do enough is they don't take a step back and figure out how can we market to women. One of the key things is any times I've been approached or recruitment fairs or anything, I feel like these big firms don't really talk about what the maternity leave policy is. Yeah. They don't talk about what flexible working policies there are. And this is even just for not just Emirati men, but men generally. And Emirati culture is all about family. Arab culture is all about family, where people want to spend time with their children, men and women. If recruiters, I feel like, market things like this, like flexible working for both men and women, so you can do this highly competitive job, but you can perhaps work from home, or you can do, 50 hours, committed a week, and X number can be flexible, but you can do these 50 hours from anywhere, that suits you best as long as you get it done. None of these things are highly marketed.
Yeah.
And, and I just think it's, until we have that flexibility, people that want that flexibility are just, they're not going to be attracted. They're going to say, oh, law, that's long hours, I can't do it. Consulting, no way.
Yeah. No, that's super fair. You've mentioned long working hours, and you've been part of very intense projects, both in the UAE and across the region. Were you able to strike a good work-life balance? Because I think as working women professionals who are part of families, it's really difficult to sort of strive to become a partner at a law firm, but also maintain, the family perspective as well. How are you able to create such a balance?
So I think about this daily, and I think a lot of women, I look at all of you, and all of you are young professionals, and I don't know what your priorities are, but I know all of us probably have to some degree the same priorities. Things like family, things like self-development, things like we want to have our personal time, our hobbies, we want to excel at our work. Everyone, I feel like, has these commonalities. And so trying to get that balance is not easy. There were days where I would, working on certain IPOs, working on certain mergers, you end up working 17-hour days, sometimes for 3-4 months straight. If you do the math, that's not a lot of sleep.
No.
But more importantly, that's not a lot of family time.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of time to do things you're passionate about on the side. I mean, I'm passionate about my work, about learning, but no person is only one-dimensional.
Right.
And that's why, again, these talks are so important, because I don't think the balancing act should just be from my perspective. I don't think we should be asking hardworking people, you have to achieve the work-life balance. I think it's something that's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And the more you read, the more you see some employers are taking that on board and are really trying flexible working. So they're trying to give a little bit to help you with that balance. And that's amazing. You know, a lot of firms though aren't as well. A lot of companies globally, not just here.
Yeah.
I think people, you know, need to understand it's not a Dubai issue. It's not a UAE issue. Globally, the more we get integrated, the more the time zones are integrated. And I think there needs to be a global change in mindset of when you have a better balanced workforce, guess what? They work harder.
Yeah.
You know, there are some companies trying 4-day work weeks, and they're showing that actually productivity is higher. Again, these aren't long-term studies. People can dispute it. But the fact is we are all people. And I just think whatever position you're in, you know, when you hear talks like this, when you hear these discussions of inclusion, of, you know, just balance and, you know, really trying to get diversity in, I always remind myself as well, because I have teams I work with, that how can I work to make things more balanced for everybody?
Yeah. Amazing. So other than being a fantastic lawyer, what are you passionate about? What do you do for fun?
I love art, sketching, painting, but in recent years I've fallen in love with rock climbing. And so my husband actually does it as well, and we'll do it in the US. You know, we've done it in Azerbaijan and different places, but I actually love doing it here. Ras Al Khaimah has beautiful rock climbing. Ras Al Khaimah and Al Ain as well. And the reason I love it is, first, people come to Dubai, or the UAE, and they see, you know, the buildings, and we've done amazing things. With our skyscrapers, with our, you know, botanical gardens, but there's just so much to our nature as well. And, you know, so when people come visit, we'll take them out to Ras Al Khaimah, and we'll get to show them a part they don't see all the time. And while we're climbing, there's always these farmers that will, you know, be really curious of what we're doing, because we do bouldering, which is like climbing without ropes.
Oh, wow.
And so they'll always be curious, and because we have these like pads that you'll climb, and if you fall, you fall on them, and they're usually really colorful. And so the farmers will sort of look, I'll say salam to them, and they'll get really surprised I speak Arabic. Once they find out I'm Emirati, it's even more of a surprise.
I can imagine.
But it's been really positive. We've been invited for lunch multiple times. The people will bring out lunch to us, which has been, I can't contain my smile, because it's been so nice. And, you know, we'll talk with these farmers. I'll translate for the people that I'm with. And it's a part that, you know, it reminds me that this is where our ancestors walked. You know, no matter how much here changes, that is untouched. And actually, Ras Al Khaimah, the government's doing an amazing initiative. They're doing this, the Ras Al Khaimah Tourism Authority. They have this competition going of whoever can create can give an idea for attracting people to Ras Al Khaimah's nature. So my husband and I submitted a proposal to write a Ras Al Khaimah climbing guidebook.
Amazing.
And, you know, if we get it, you know, we'll find out soon. But you get help basically writing this, and I mean, that would be, you know, inshallah, that would be really cool, because it would be a little bit of contribution that I can make to my country forever. And when I've told people about it, it's been nice that non-Emiratis as well have been so excited to say, oh, how can we contribute? You know, and people have come out with us, they've gone climbing with us, and it's nice to see so many expats and Emiratis interested in the idea of forever creating this space that shows people the beauty of our nature. So inshallah, we'll find out soon.
It's definitely a different side to attractions in the UAE that are outside of malls and theme parks.
Especially before 2020. So
yeah.
That would be phenomenal. We'd get so many expats coming in and being like, hey, here's a whole new side to the country you can see.
That's absolutely fantastic. If we can pivot a bit to our audience members, and what advice would you give to both men and women who are aspiring to become lawyers?
Well, I think the first thing is, you know, when people sometimes say they want to become lawyers, it's always the joke to say, oh, don't do that. Oh, you're making a mistake, you know. But in all seriousness, it's an amazing profession. Not just working at a law firm, but understanding how to do things that lawyers do. It helps you when you're buying a house to know how to negotiate the contracts. If you're sitting in somewhere like the Dubai Future Foundation space here, and you're developing your idea, knowing the law teaches you how to protect it, how to make sure people don't take it, and how to develop it, how to get investors. It's something that is so beneficial. And also as Emiratis, or even non-Emiratis, if you were to become a lawyer and work in the UAE, it's such a privilege, it's such an honor for me, for a citizen, to have talented people like that, because you're really, especially with open mindsets, you're creating the framework and the rules for how people work in this country. And there's not that many professions that do that. Sorry, just one final thing, which really helped me actually. When I decided I wanted to do law and I started asking questions back when I was 18, I actually asked my sister, Shema, who's in the front, and I told her I wanted to do law. And she's like, Sara, I work in the DIFC, like I know tons of lawyers, I'll introduce you. And it was because she did that, and I met lawyers. I talked to them, what do you do on a daily basis? I think that's important. Sometimes a title sounds attractive, but you don't know what the person does day to day. And the minute I did that, it really lit that fire, all right, that's what I want to do. Because even if I don't ever stay in a law firm forever, I could take those skills and do these and these and these things. So ask. Honestly, I do it all the time. I'll reach out to people on LinkedIn who have careers that are interesting, and I'll just send them an email and be like, hi, my name is Sara, I'm interested in this. Could we have a coffee? And you'd be surprised how many people are receptive, how many people want to help.
Yeah. So if we could go back in time and you had the ability to talk to your younger self and tell her about tell her what you know now, what advice would you give a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old Sara, or even a 15-year-old?
I think I would tell her to not worry as much. I was very carefree. I think I had a really good childhood. But I think as you grow up, you're sort of told, or you're sort of asked, especially because we graduate at 16, 17, you're told, well, what do you want to do? What career do you want to have? Oh, this kid excels in this, they're going to be X or Y profession. And that puts a lot of pressure on kids. Yeah. Especially if you don't say, oh, yeah, I'm you can't really believe it at that age. You don't know. So I would tell younger Sara, don't worry, do the things you're passionate about and ask questions. Because if I asked, I would have known that actually there was a way to become a lawyer still, to reach this point that I'm at now, instead of doing this straight line of going to the UK to do law school and then do my training contract and then work. If I asked, I would have known I could go this way and study history at university or even art history. And then I could go do so, and then I could still become a lawyer at this end point because there's conversion courses you could do. And, so I think that's it. Have fun, don't stress, and just ask.
Amazing. Any final statements?
Well, I want to thank you so much. And, again, I want to thank everyone for making time. I know we only have a certain amount of time in the day, and you're choosing to sit here. You're choosing to listen and to talk with the people around you. And it's really beautiful. It's really amazing to see people take that time. Yeah. So thank you. And thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for my beautiful flowers.
Happy birthday again. Shall we open it to the audience? I'm sure you're very eager to ask Sara some questions.
Go ahead. Yes?
I wanted to ask about the women in the corporate world. What I've faced, I don't know if it's in this country or it's a general thing, that women don't really support each other. Because it's not many women in this country, and whenever you see a woman, you treat it like a competition. So how do you manage in the law world, the relationship with other women?
That's a really, really good point. And that's something that I think women need to talk openly about more. You know, first, we need to admit we're sometimes mean to each other. Like, we're really, you know, mean. And I just feel like it's important to understand the minute we enter into the workforce, you know, I've thought a lot about this. The minute we've entered into the workforce, the first thing we're told, directly or indirectly, the workforce is really competitive. You know, there's not enough spaces for women. And it's always a competition. So the minute you're told there's not enough spaces and it's competitive for you, immediately you go into the workforce with your elbows out and you're like, all right, if there's a space and there's a woman, she's my competition. Forget the men, and we need to talk about that to change that. And what I do personally, and actually my older sister had given me this advice and I've taken it really, really to heart, is if you see another woman on a deal, especially, you know, in court, as lawyers or consultants or anything, there's always going to be one or two women. Make the time to approach her at a coffee break, whenever, and just tell her, listen, you know, we're the only women on this deal, and we need to support each other. And you know what? That's actually not bad for your client, because collaborative teams actually help both sides. You know, if you learn anything about negotiation, and I'm sure you all know already, when you negotiate and somebody leaves the negotiation feeling like they lost, it's a bad negotiation. It's a bad deal. So I can't say that, so I mean, just in short, you can't change that discomfort people have, that insecurity women have towards each other. But you can change the way you act with people. And when you show that openness that we're the only women here, I want to support you and we should support each other, I found it lets your guard down a little bit. And if you ever feel this feeling of somebody gets a project and you think, well, oh, why her, not me? I felt it. You know, I have to stop myself. And it's fine. Everyone gets jealous. Everyone feels competitive. But you stop yourself in your head and you say, why not her? She's worked just as hard. And then I'll go up to her and say, you know, can I help with this? Is there anything I can do? And I've just found those little steps continuously will have even just a little bit of an impact around you.
Great.
I hope
Great
that helps.
answer. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, what was your name? Katrina, that was a really, really good point.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for the speech so far. I personally am really enjoying it. I just wanted to see, first of all, my name is Diana, and I just wanted to see where does the UAE stand in anti-harassment laws when it comes to women at workplace. So I studied finance, and then my career has always been in project management in industries that it's literally men-driven, like mining, energy, smart meters. So I'm literally the only female hired in my company, and we have 250 employees around the world. And I see it to be a trend, especially in the Middle East, that it's very easier for my, male, colleagues or even, male managers and company owners to easily use, I would say, words and phrases against women than to their own peers, their own male peers. And obviously, we've got this Me Too movement going on, and yeah, that's on a very different level, but obviously you're a lawyer yourself. So are we anywhere near at least having some sort of law that if I'm spoken to in a certain way, if my female colleagues are spoken to in a certain way, treated in a certain way, I even seen emails from my friends that the way they're spoken to is absolutely, unacceptable in the West. Do we have anything at least in the working here, or is it already there and I personally don't know of?
That is another very good question.
Thank you.
And so from a legal perspective, I have actually looked at it for, a few friends, and the labor law does, so legally it is addressed, harassment is addressed, but sometimes, again, as a lawyer, obviously I'd love you to come to me and say, let's go to the court, great.
No, let's just do it. Let's just do an arbitration, not a litigation.
Absolutely, arbitration, even better. So, I mean, it's easy for me to say that. But realistically, it's hard to say you want to go raise a case. You know, so these conversations are important because even if you do raise a case, let's say you raise a case and legally you win, you know, whatever winning would mean.
Yeah.
It's important to have these discussions because if they're not had in your company, in other companies, regularly, they're not going to change internal policy. So even though you spoke out, you're not going to have other women speaking out, other women that are sharing the way they feel by these emails. So legally, the labor law does deal with harassment, and there's the labor tribunals that you could, you know, if it gets very serious, I would recommend you do speak with them because obviously your comfort and your safety is always first.
Yeah.
But if it's at a level where you think, I don't want to raise this, you know, yet, you know, at a legal level, you still, no matter what, the fact that you are speaking about it means for you this is very real. It needs to be a discussion that happens within the company. It needs to, at the very least, first with HR. And if it was me, and I've advised people this, that HR needs, you know, you need to work with HR and with management to create policies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And write them out. Policies listing what is considered harassment, what is considered, you know, what is considered offensive. And sometimes you'll be in an awkward position and people don't put enough weight to this sometimes. When you're complaining,
That is exactly my
they
point.
think you're complaining. You're not
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Absolutely. And they make you feel like you're a complainer, you're not grateful, and that is unacceptable. You know, that is, I'm so happy you mentioned that because women aren't told it's okay to have an opinion on these things. It's okay to show you're uncomfortable. And so, number one, you need to speak with HR. And if HR brushes it off,
They always do.
yeah, you put it in writing. Lawyers love writing.
Yeah.
You know, you put it in an email, and this is example 1, 2, and you send it to the board. And you say, you know, be collaborative. Obviously, nobody wants to just fight and kick you out.
Yeah.
You know, you seem like a smart, talented person.
Thank you.
You know, you are more, especially with your background, you're saying you are clearly an asset.
Yeah.
And if it's an international company as well, they're going to recognize, you know, your value here and globally. So I would raise it. And because there needs, and I wouldn't stop before there's written policy change. Because why should you have to leave your job? Because somebody thinks they can talk to you in a certain way. They can, you know, demoralize you or, you know, call you a girl or something, you know.
Yeah.
You know, don't be emotional. And I think it's okay to let other women know that that's not okay. And
Thank
to
you very
talk
much.
with men, to say that these things are not okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to speak with you more later on if you'd like to help write that letter.
The only
saying.
problem is, Sara, is that you said to me to raise it to the board. The problem is, for my case personally, the way these words were phrased, it comes from the board. So there is no one for me to, and you know, I've been dealing with a lot of you know, legal departments, you know, for the manufacturing agreements and, you know, the IPOs and so on and so forth. So I'm very much familiar with law, which is then I've always wondered, is there any law to protect females from any background, from any nationality, to, you know, have a line that they know at least if I'm spoken to like this, not for me to go to court and, you know, even raise anything, like for the person to know, oh, wow, okay, that was unacceptable. At least give me an apology, because a trend that I've seen, you know, in my friends and in my circle is that people are like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to apply to another job. But to me, I'm a big picture person. That's not going to solve the issue.
Yes.
Because you're going to be replaced by another woman. She's going to be spoken to like this, and then, you know, it's a roller coaster effect. Anyways, but thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Really, really important topic. And I'm definitely happy to speak with you more, but I'm so happy that you raised it. Most women stay quiet.
Yeah. Okay, next one.
Any more questions? And just if I could say one last thing, Diana, right? Yes. What Diana said is something we should all keep in mind Because maybe you're not facing the issue Diana's facing, but sometimes as women, when we face an issue in the workforce, especially if we have a good job or we have a family that we need to take care of, sometimes we feel like we can't speak. And sometimes you think, don't rock the boat, but you know what? If you're not going to do it, who is? So thank you again for raising it.
And I think from a HR perspective, I would say definitely speak up. I was exposed to something similar in a previous role, and then realized I wasn't the only one. And so this was how Me Too was launched. It's when we all came together and started sharing stories, and rather than shaming each other on what we're wearing or how do we talk, it's about making sure that the experience doesn't happen again. So find your allies within the organization and then use them to help sort of change the policies. Because a lot of the time, some of the men don't even realize what they're doing, so it's bringing to their attention that, no, it's actually not okay for you to speak to me in this way. And then 2 is bringing the men and the women together to actually fight this collectively and collaboratively. And your HR needs to have some action.
And that's just if I could add one small thing, that point of allies. A lot of these women empowerment events, I feel like men sometimes feel like they can't be part of the conversation, but actually men are our allies. We share the workforce with them, we share families with them, we share the world really with them. And so, what Mary says is right. There's probably a lot of men that don't even think about it because it's not an issue they're facing. So, it doesn't hurt to really try to look and see who your allies are. Yes?
Thank you, Sara, so much for this very insightful discussion. So you've been a lawyer now for quite some time, and you've been exposed to different environments, different sectors. What next? Do you sometimes entertain the idea of what is there for me beyond the law, or would you like to go into a different space? Have you thought about this? And have you perhaps hesitated because there's so much prestige that comes with being a lawyer, or that the fact that you became a lawyer, so Sara the lawyer, you're kind of known as that, and then suddenly to say I'm going to pivot and maybe do something a bit different? Has that been something that you've thought about? And you can be honest with us. Yeah. I won't tell Mom.
Leave it to my sister to ask me on stage. I think that's a good point, though. Sometimes if you have a good job, or a prestigious perceived job, sometimes you think, I can't change, I can't. And I mean, the short answer is I think about it all the time. Is there something I would enjoy more? Is there something I could be more useful at? Something I can, really thrive at? And I mean, the answer is I'm always thinking about it. But at the moment, I love what I do, and I love making time and finding time to do events like this where I can share my experiences and encourage these discussions. So I'm hoping, the short-term goal is to be doing more things like this.
Amazing. Any other questions from our audience? I have one last question for you. What is one piece of advice that you would leave us with?
We've discussed a lot of topics. I'm trying to think. I think one piece of advice is you're not in it alone. You're surrounded by, your family, your friends, but also all the women here. There's an endless support network. So dig from it, ask questions, and, sometimes really believe in yourself. Like what Diana just said, her question, that's her believing in herself, that this matters to me, I'm sure it matters to other people. And to stand up and speak out sometimes if you see something wrong.
Amazing. Well, Sara, thank you so much for joining us at the Women's Majlis. It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.